In the rhythms of music, in the threads of fabric, in the sacred space of storytelling and silence, lies a treasure more powerful than gold: culture.
Culture is what makes us, as human beings, different from other species in our environment. Culture is the vehicle through which we adapt to our environment. Culture gives us different institutions which help us to form our political, our social, organizational structures. Cultural heritage is such an important thing to not only anthropologists who have culture as the main concept of consumption of knowledge and dissemination of the same, but also helping us to really shape our lives, understand our past, and use that past to shape our future.
But this identity across Kenya and beyond is under threat. In a fast-changing world, who is documenting, defending, and transmitting what makes us?
And there are so many aspects of culture which we normally don't take up seriously because we think that culture is usually just, I would say, what people call folk dance, regalia, ceremonial regalia, circumcision ceremonies. And you hear people say in drama festival, something to the effect, we are presenting a cultural dance from the Luo community, and I get amused. We are presenting a traditional song from the Taita community. We have come up with a song from the Mijikenda culture. It gets me amused because one song in 45 minutes cannot actually represent Giriama culture. It's not possible. Why am I saying so? I'm saying so because Giriama culture, Luo culture, Luya culture, Agikuyu culture, and all others is a diverse, complex whole which incorporates very many things which are related.
Anthropology, the science of humanity, lies at the heart of this mission. In Kenya, anthropologists have long worked to document indigenous knowledge, social customs, oral histories, and belief systems, the cornerstone of our intangible cultural heritage.
We need to really get to the depths of what culture is. And that takes not just a 4-year course in anthropology or a 7-year course from master's to PhD for you to say you've now understood what that culture is. You have to live that culture. You must have the lived experience of that culture. People only preserve and keep alive what they think is important. And that is only very possible if the superstructure I talked about earlier on is alive to the importance of keeping alive these aspects of culture. Our dances are not just mere shaking of our hips or shoulders or legs and moving in some rhythmic way. Our dances communicate things more than dance. In my own community, and I believe in many other communities, ability to dance communicates bodily and mind health. People who know how to dance are considered in many communities to be healthy people in their minds and in their bodies, and they are at peace. So dance communicates knowledge about health, but many of us may not know that. Our songs are used occasionally. That means not every song is sung every day. Songs are preserved for occasions, for ceremonies, to communicate messages. You can think of circumcision songs among the Bukusu. Some of the songs are used to communicate courtship messages. Some of the songs are used to ridicule people who are miscreants in society. You can actually name the person who has wronged other people during that festive season. No one will take you to court for defamation. No one will take you to the elders for ruining their name. Because in that period of circumcision, people are allowed to vent their frustrations. People are allowed to communicate freely. People are allowed to sing vulgar songs openly, but only during that festive season of circumcision. Not any other occasion.
Anthropologists like Dr. Shilavuka are bridging Kenya's past and future, working with the community to document, preserve, and celebrate cultures often overlooked in national narratives.
I have particularly done research around the country of Kenya, mainly at the coast, doing research on indigenous knowledge about the management of marine environment resources, mangroves, corals, and fisheries. I've had to understand why the Giriama, the Digo, the Kambe, the Choni, and other Mijikenda groups have internalized marine resource environment knowledge and used it to not only use those resources sparingly and prudently, but also manage those resources very intelligently. I've also had to understand how these communities have developed their own indigenous taxonomies, their own management systems, their own astronomical knowledge of the sea and the land. Kenya has a very vibrant and rich cultural heritage. Kenya is immensely endowed with cultural heritage. Just think of the communities that are found in Kenya. More than 60 communities, more than 60 different cultures. That itself is a rich corpus of cultural knowledge. So that's very rich. Think of all the aspects of those cultural groupings. Think of their traditional indigenous foods. Think of their indigenous medicinal knowledge. Think of their atmospheric astronomical knowledge about the weather, the climate, and all that. Think about their agricultural production knowledge. Think about their breeding knowledge about animals. Think about their knowledge about the environment and culture in different aspects. That is a very rich body of cultural heritage.
From the songs of the Mijikenda to the beadwork of the Samburu, Kenya's intangible cultural heritage is as vast as it is vulnerable.
Some of our communities have been commodified and therefore making their cultural heritage superficial and irrelevant. I'll take the Maasai, for example, a very rich, iconic cultural community in Kenya. Their cultural expressions have been commodified to a very large extent until many of the Maasai people who espouse that cultural heritage properly are not really amused by what is going on, and you cannot blame them. Take, for example, the Akamba people who do a lot of very important, impeccable carvings. A lot of that has been commodified, losing the original, antecedent, cultural significance, actually the ritual aspect. In my own community, Isukuti dance has become iconic, in eventually becoming part of the UNESCO heritage, I would say inventory. It's gone into the inventory of UNESCO. A very interesting cultural heritage. The only talking drums of Kenya. I find sometimes that being commodified, and some people pretending to play Sukuti, which is not Sukuti itself. Those are some of the threats I'll talk about. Then people putting commercial interests before the ritual significance of the heritage. That's a very big threat.
In 2003, UNESCO adopted a convention for the safeguarding of intangible cultural heritage, urging member states to recognize, document, and protect their living traditions. Kenya is a signatory with a mandate to create inventories, support bearers of heritage, and engage communities in preservation.
Kenya does not have a stand-alone policy on intangible cultural heritage. However, some of the aspects of intangible cultural heritage are carried out by other institutions that have policies related to ICH. For example, the Indigenous Knowledge Act promotes matters of intangible cultural heritage. Though it's not a policy specifically meant for intangible heritage, most of the work that that policy advocates for includes matters of ICH. Then if we look at matters of the law, the Constitution itself, which is the supreme law of Kenya, broadly embraces culture, and ICH is one of it. Then at a national level, we also have the National Policy on Culture and Heritage, which also talks about matters of the implementation of the convention and the safeguarding of ICH. So in matters policy, much as we do not have a standalone policy on culture, we have some laws, some acts here and there, some policies in different sectors that support the safeguarding of intangible cultural heritage in Kenya. However, it is important that Kenya comes up with a specific policy to address matters of intangible cultural heritage.
The 2005 convention focused on promoting the diversity of cultural expressions, safeguarding creative freedom, artistic innovation, and local languages. Yet, despite global frameworks, Kenya faces enormous challenges in conserving its cultural heritage.
Globally, the culture sector is poorly funded, and therefore this is a global challenge. It's not just unique to Kenya. But of course, as a country, we need to think of how best can we implement the convention, conserve our heritage, protect our heritage, promote it to levels whereby it can make money for the country. That requires finances. So we need to think about allocating more financial resources into the culture sector and If we do that, then it will even trickle down to the implementation of the 4 conventions, culture conventions, that Kenya has ratified. Not just the Intangible Cultural Heritage Convention, but the 1972 Convention on World Heritage is also poorly funded. We also talk about the 2005 Convention, the Convention for the Promotion of the Diversity of Cultural Expressions, whereby we talk about the production of cultural goods and services through the value chain. So, and of course, the 1970 Convention that on restitution of cultural property that we ratified the other day. All these conventions to be implemented requires resources. So the government must take serious intervention measures to ensure that the culture sector is well funded.
Cultural heritage comes in many forms. There is intangible, such as sacred sites, architecture, paintings, tools, and the intangible, which includes songs, dances, languages, spirituality, foodways, oral history, and craft knowledge. But the threat to these old forms is imminent. The anthropologists have confirmed that if we do not conserve our culture, we will soon be a people without roots.
Then we have education, which I'm not saying is particularly bad, negative, but it is also contributing to the decay and erosion and, of course, disappearance of our cultural heritage, especially intangible cultural heritage, which can help us to put in perspective properly our physical, tangible cultural heritage. Then we have the global market economy, some of which is supplanting our indigenous cultural heritage with international, or what I would call foreign cultural heritage, making our cultural heritage become obsolete, become irrelevant. So that's another threat.
The burden of conservation falls largely on individuals, NGOs, and the few passionate educators, a system neither sustainable nor equitable.
In terms of human resource, Kenya is poorly endowed in human resources to effectively implement the 2003 Convention. As we so speak, we have about 3 experts that have been trained by UNESCO to implement the convention. These are a drop in the ocean, considering that all communities in Kenya have their own cultural heritage. So we need to build the capacity of people to effectively implement the convention. We understand in Kenya that culture is devolved, is a devolved function. So we need to go down to the county level to create some pool of experts who can implement the convention through capacity building.
China offers powerful lessons with robust policies, cultural funding, and formal recognition of cultural bearers. Heritage preservation is a national priority.
As a person, I have observed what the Chinese have done, and I've noted quite a number of things which are different from the way we do things at home. One of the things that I've noted, which has left a very lasting impression on me, is the way the Chinese community, led by the government, from the ancient past, harness knowledge about culture, about institutions, how to pass this knowledge from this generation to the next, how to dig back and throw the fishing line in the past and bring it back to bring that information to the future. I have learned a lot from that.
From the Tulo Earth houses to traditional palace museum and Mangrotto's rock art, communities are empowered to make culture economically viable and socially respected. For Kenya, the lesson is clear. Conservation must move from passion to policy, from volunteers to structured systems.
We were told that Beijing receives 300,000 people every day. And those are records from the Ministry of Commerce. That is the latest data from last year. So think about it. If 300 people visited Beijing every day, how many people visited Beijing in 2024? And just supposing everyone paid 1,000, no, our shilling exchanges to theirs at 723 or 20 or thereabouts. So you can do your calculation. If everyone paid an average of 50 yuan by 17, by 300,000, by 365, how much money did Beijing, only Beijing, receive in 2024 in visitations to cultural heritage sites? And Beijing does not have one. It has many, several cultural heritage sites.
There is hope. County governments can mainstream culture into development. While NATCOM can advocate for dedicated budgets, anthropologists cannot be left behind, as they can partner with schools, media, and communities to document, digitize, and teach. And policies on intangible cultural heritage must be developed and enacted urgently.
The communities that have, for long periods of time, for hundreds of years, are preserved these items of culture, benefit from the research or economic activities that may accrue from utilization of these materials. So the country may still in nascent stages, initial baby steps, but I think we are doing, we are going in the right direction. But what I want to emphasize here again is that we don't make the mistake of looking for international organizations to fund this process, because their interests, political, economic, will come into play. The government has to put resources, local resources, in this process. The government has to put in place mechanisms that bring on board the communities, and the Ministry of the ministry where the State Department of Culture is housed should actually be given a lot of support, and I would say financial support.
Heritage is not about the past. It is a tool for the future in tourism, education, peace building, identity, and innovation. When a people know who they are, they stand taller.
We need to do a lot of research and invest in research. We need to do a lot of documentation, and that requires resources. And I believe we have those resources. We need to educate our communities about our cultural heritage. It doesn't take much. It doesn't take a long time. It only takes commitment. We need to infuse a sense of belonging.
For Culture Quest, I'm Levis Msumba.